There are two levels of Dharma protectors. One is super mundane and one is mundane. So you have two types of protectors. One is enlightened but in ordinary form, in disguise. And the other one is ordinary and not in disguise. Within the ordinary protectors, we do not take refuge in the ordinary protectors or pray to them or take refuge in them. We cannot. Why? It would defeat our refuge practice. So even the great protector Nechung of Tibet, perpetuated by the Dalai Lama, which I'll show you in a short while, he comes and makes offerings to the Lama. The Lama does not make offerings to him. Why? The Sangha is much higher than a protector. The three jewels. When we study Vajrayana more and more, we will see how similar it is to the southern schools of Buddhism. Only the outer appearance is quite exotic and wild and colorful. But actually, the northern tradition never strays from Buddha's teachings. If it does, no one in the northern tradition can become enlightened. And I will have to take a stand and say, there are people in Tibet that are enlightened. Don't look at me as a sad example. But there are good examples in Tibet of enlightened beings. So you don't say, oh, look at you. You're not enlightened. That's true. That's true. But that doesn't mean there's not enlightened beings. So what happens is, within the worldly protectors, there are two types. The worldly protectors, there are two types. These two types, why do the highly enlightened beings take on worldly form? The highly enlightened beings take on a worldly form. It's easier for us to contact. Very high-level protectors and high-level beings is not easy for us to contact due to the lack of merits. So, example, to see Buddha in his natural state, for example in Tushita, will be more difficult than to see an emanation of Buddha such as Shakyamuni on earth. Why? Simply because it's closer to us. So worldly protectors that are enlightened emanate as worldly protectors, so they are closer. And there are a very special feature about them. They also, because they're in worldly form, can enter a very special person who has practiced, who has done retreats, who is pure, who has cleared their energy channels, and take trance and talk. In China, Zai Kung is renowned to be an emanation of Kuan Yin. The laughing Buddha, we call him in Tibet Hoshang, is well known to be an emanation of Maitreya Buddha. Well known. So that's not something just in Tibet. That's not something just in Tibet. If Avalokiteshvara remained in Potala Palace, Potala is not the palace in Tibet, it's the actual Pure Land. The Potala Palace is based on the Pure Land. The actual Pure Land of Avalokiteshvara or Kuan Yin is called Potala. If Avalokiteshvara or Kuan Yin remain there, we cannot see. But when Kuan Yin emanates into the world to teach, to help, to assist, then we can see. Why? They can come to our level, we cannot come to their level at this time. So therefore, when they come closer to us, the worldly or mundane protectors that are enlightened, we can take refuge in them. If we can take refuge in the Dalai Lama, we can take refuge in the other worldly emanations too that are of enlightened beings. Why? The Dalai Lama's mind is enlightened. Trijang Rinpoche's mind is enlightened, but their body is borrowed. They're Nirmanakaya or Tuku form. Therefore, we can take refuge in them, their mind. So if we can take refuge in them, we can take refuge in the class of deities that are enlightened, but in worldly form. They're in worldly form because easier for us to pray to, easiest for us to get results because we need less merit. Let's be very blunt. How much credentials would you need to walk into a world-renowned bank, to get a loan, and to start a business? Or if you go to a dark, smelly alley and bring your friend JP and borrow from the loan shark, Andy. What credentials do you need to borrow from a loan shark? What credentials do you need to borrow from a bank? The same amount of money. That's right. So you can get from both sources. Some of us who are qualified, we can get it. But one thing I don't understand is if you're qualified, why do you need to borrow money? The bank is very sneaky. But anyways, my point is, if you have the credentials, you can go to the bank and borrow. So you're going to need more credentials for the bank because they're established, clean, clear institutions. So for people out in the alley without big buildings and big bills to pay and no overhead, they just sit there with a cigar in their mouth and 2 or 3 girls hanging around them, and they just eat kway teow all day, watch TV. You don't need any credentials. You just borrow the money. Why? They're closer to you. Similarly, Satrap is not some loan shark. But I'm giving you an example of how the deities are so kind to come closer to us. So with someone like Satrap, who is in a worldly form, but the mind is Amitabha, you need less merit to contact him. The results are faster and quicker, and he can accomplish your wishes much faster than someone who's in a bank.